This video introduces you to the concept of zoning. In the previous video, you learned that OCPs divide the area within a local government's boundaries into land use designations, which designate current or intended future use of property. By contrast, zoning bylaws regulate only current land use and divide the territory of a local government into separate districts with different regulations for land use. Because zoning bylaws dictate how land may be used in the present day, they are of great interest to landowners and therefore to real estate professionals. In British Columbia, virtually every parcel of real estate is affected by a zoning bylaw, which places some restriction on the use of the property, the location of buildings on the property, or the form or shape of buildings permitted on the property. An important part of a licensee's role may be to determine whether a property being bought or sold conforms to the relevant zoning bylaw or what new building may be constructed on a particular property in accordance with the relevant zoning bylaws. A zoning bylaw usually consists of three parts: the official map showing the location of each zone, the definitions applicable to most or all of the zones, and the regulations applicable to each particular zone, which indicate what uses are permitted within that zone. Permitted land uses, such as residential, commercial, or industrial, are perhaps the most important aspect of the zoning bylaw, as this dictates the type of activity which can be allowed on the particular property. The official zoning map depicts the location of each zone, similar to how an OCP map depicts different designations. To avoid confusion, each municipality or regional district will usually have only one or two copies of the official zoning maps that are certified as being correct and up to date. To ascertain the correct zoning and determine the applicable regulations, it is necessary to refer to the official maps. In addition to regulating land, zoning bylaws contain a number of other regulations, including the restrictions on the number of buildings that can be built on a lot, regulations determining how far buildings must be set back from the property line, limitations on the maximum height of buildings, limitations on the density of buildings relative to the size of the lot, regulations regarding the permissibility of home occupations, regulations for off-street parking and loading, and rules governing the size, design, and location of advertising signs in the jurisdiction. In addition to the commonly regulated matters described on the previous slide, a zoning bylaw may provide for regulation of specific issues that are of particular interest to property owners in urban areas, such as secondary suites and short-term tourist rentals. The regulation of secondary suites is common in zoning bylaws. In most instances, secondary suites occupied by extended family members are permitted. However, secondary suites, which are entirely self-sufficient from the principal single-family home and which are occupied by unrelated individuals, might not be permitted under the zoning bylaw. Furthermore, an existing secondary suite may have been constructed without proper building permits and inspection. In these cases, the property is said to contain an illegal suite, unauthorized accommodation, or non-conforming suite. Recognizing the necessity of secondary suites, many local governments have generally taken a non-enforcement approach to secondary suites, even though they may not be permitted under the zoning bylaw, provided that such suites are not the subject of complaints by neighbors. The risk in owning a property with an illegal secondary suite is that upon discovery of an illegal suite by the local government, the property owner may be required to do what is necessary to bring the suite into accordance with the current building codes and bylaws, demolish the suite, and/or pay monetary fines. If a client purchased a property with the expectation of financial support from a secondary suite that turned out to be an illegal suite, this could be devastating for the client. Another form of regulation through zoning bylaws that has recently attracted attention is short-term tourist accommodation. In response to the growing popularity of short-term rental companies such as Airbnb and VRBO and pressure from the public, many local governments have implemented zoning rules which prohibit short-term accommodation, usually defined as stays less than 30 days. Given this, licensees who are acting for clients seeking investment or rental opportunities should determine whether short-term rentals are permitted in that particular municipality. Let's now switch gears and talk about rezoning. It is important to remember that zoning bylaws are not permanent and may be amended by local governments through amending bylaws. The rezoning process generally begins in one of two ways. The local government initiates rezoning on its own, or more commonly, upon receiving an application from a property owner. In order to be passed, the proposed bylaw must be voted on favorably by the municipal council or regional district board 4 times. First, the application is reviewed by a staff member who performs a preliminary assessment on the viability of the proposal. Second, the staff member will then prepare a report that comments on the proposed rezoning and will submit it to the council or board for a first reading or first vote. If the elected officials vote in favor, the officials authorize staff members to proceed with their negotiations with the applicant. After a second hearing, if officials still support the rezoning, a public hearing will be held, giving the public a chance to have their say. Next, a third hearing will be held where the officials will once again vote. If the vote continues to be in favor of the proposal, a number of requirements will be imposed on the applicant at this stage. Finally, after the developer has either complied with all of these requirements or posted security with the local government to ensure that they will comply, the council or board gives the bylaw its 4th and final reading. If the resolution passes the 4th reading, the amending bylaw is adopted. This concludes the video on zoning. Thank you for watching.